You're lying in bed right now, maybe scrolling through videos, looking for something to help you sleep, something to quiet the mind. You
I
found
mean
this
no
title,
harm,
Neanderthals,
nor I.
Humans,
Share the fire.
Survival, and you clicked. If this video plays while you fall asleep, that's fine. That's what it's for. You can subscribe if you want. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching, from what time it is where you are. But if you stay awake, I'm going to tell you a story. Not about them, about you. About what's inside you right now. About blood that's 40,000 years old flowing through your veins at this very moment. About choices made in ice and darkness that echo in every breath you take. This isn't just history. This is your history. And by the time we're done, you'll understand something about yourself you never knew before. Let's begin. 50,000 years ago, there were two kinds of human beings on Earth, not one. Two. One kind was stronger. They had bigger brains, thicker bones, muscles that could crush stone. They'd lived in Europe for 200,000 years before the other kind even arrived. They knew every cave, every river, every mountain pass. They knew how to survive winters that would kill you in a single night. They were called Neanderthals. The other kind, weaker, lighter bones, smaller muscles. They came from Africa where it was warm. They didn't know the cold, didn't know the land, didn't know the animals. That was us, Homo sapiens, your ancestors. Here's the question that's haunted scientists for 150 years. Which one survived? If you guessed the strong one, you're wrong. We're here, they're gone. Why, that's the mystery, the biggest mystery in the entire story of humanity. And the answer isn't what you think. It's not about intelligence. Both were smart. It's not about tools. Both made tools. It's not about some magic mutation that made us special. It's about something else, something smaller. Something that didn't show up in the bones or the stones or the caves, something that's inside you right now. And over the next 60 minutes, we're going to find it. But first, you need to understand something. This isn't just about them, about Neanderthals who died 40,000 years ago in caves you'll never see. This is about you. Because here's what scientists discovered in 2010 when they finally sequenced the Neanderthal genome, when they finally read the genetic code from bones tens of thousands of years old. You carry their DNA. If your ancestors came from anywhere outside of Africa, if your grandparents came from Europe, from Asia, from the Middle East, from the Americas, you have Neanderthal genes inside you right now. About 1 to 4% of your genome. That's not a lot, but it's real. Every cell in your body carries a message from them, a whisper from 40,000 years ago. But what does it mean? What do those genes do? Why did they give them to us, and why did they disappear? We'll find out, but slowly. Step by step, the way any good story should be told. Let me tell you who they were. Not the cartoon version, not the grunting caveman with the club. The real thing. Imagine a man standing in front of you, 5'5", not tall but broad, incredibly broad. Shoulders like a wrestler, arms thick as your thigh, hands that could bend iron if iron existed. He weighs 180 pounds, same as a modern man who's 6 feet tall, but he's 8 inches shorter. Where's the weight? Muscle, bone, density. His face is different from yours. The forehead slopes back, heavy brow ridges over the eyes, a nose that projects forward wide and prominent. No chin like you have. The jaw just slopes back into a neck thick as a fire hydrant. But the eyes. The eyes are human, same size as yours, same placement, same depth. If you looked into a Neanderthal's eyes, you'd see something looking back, something you'd recognize. Not an animal, a person. Now imagine what that person could do. Scientists have studied Neanderthal bones for 150 years. They've measured the thickness, the density, the places where muscles attached, and they've tried to calculate how strong were they. Here's the estimate. A Neanderthal man with no training, no weightlifting, no gym could probably bench press 500 pounds. Naturally, just from living. Their hands were massive, thick fingers, huge thumbs, but incredibly precise. We know because of the tools they made. Stone tools that required fine motor control. Delicate flaking, careful pressure. You can't make those tools with clumsy hands. So they had strength and skill, power and precision. The force of a gorilla with the dexterity of a surgeon. Both at once, their faces were built for the cold. That massive nose, it warmed freezing air before it hit the lungs. The thick bones around the eyes, protection from brutal winds. Every part of their body was engineered for one thing: surviving the Ice Age. And they did. For 200,000 years they survived. Through 20 glacial cycles. 20 times the ice advanced and retreated. 20 times temperatures dropped so low that most of Europe became uninhabitable. 20 times they held on. They hunted mammoth, 6-ton animals with tusks that could gore you skin like leather armor and the intelligence to fight back. Neanderthals went after them with wooden spears tipped with stone. A mammoth weighs 12,000 pounds. You weigh 180, you have a stick. The mammoth has tusks and rage, and you win. How courage, coordination, planning, intelligence, all of it. The isotope analysis of Neanderthal bones tells us what they ate. Mostly meat, 80 to 90% meat, reindeer, bison, horses, sometimes mammoth. They were hyper-carnivores, like wolves, like lions, and they took care of each other. There's a skeleton found in a cave in Iraq called Shanidar. We call him Shanidar 1. He lived to about 40 years old. That's old for a Neanderthal. That's old for the Ice Age. But here's the thing, he was a mess. His right arm was withered, probably from birth. Useless. His right eye was damaged, maybe blind. He had injuries all over his body. Healed fractures, worn joints, old wounds that had closed but never fully recovered. This man was falling apart. And yet he lived to 40. In the Ice Age with one arm, how someone fed him, someone protected him, someone kept him alive for decades even though he couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, couldn't do the things Neanderthals needed to do to survive. That's not instinct. That's compassion. That's culture. 40,000 years ago in a cave in Iraq, someone loved this man enough to keep him alive when nature said he should die. Let that settle for a moment, because we're going to come back to it. They buried their dead. We're pretty sure. There's debate about this, scientists argue. But several Neanderthal skeletons have been found in what look like deliberate graves. Bodies positioned carefully, sometimes with objects nearby. Maybe grave goods, maybe not. But even if they didn't bury their dead with ceremony, they at least moved the bodies. Put them somewhere. That shows awareness. That shows they understood death as something different from sleep, something final. They used pigments, red ochre, manganese dioxide, minerals ground into powder. We find it at their sites, on their tools, on shells with holes drilled through them, like beads, like jewelry. What were they doing with it? We don't know. Maybe body painting, maybe decorating hides, maybe marking territory, maybe something spiritual we can't even imagine. But they were doing something symbolic, something beyond pure survival. And they lived in Europe for 200,000 years. 200,000 years. Modern humans have only been doing civilization for about 10,000 years. Writing for 5,000, cities for 6,000. Neanderthals survived in Ice Age Europe for 20 times longer than we've had written language. They knew that land. They knew every valley, every seasonal migration route of the herds, every place where flint could be found, every cave that stayed dry, every spring that never froze. This was their world, and they were masters of it. They hunted big game. We know from the bones, we know from the isotope signatures that tell us what they ate. Neanderthals ate meat, lots of it, mostly from large animals. Reindeer, bison, horses, sometimes mammoth. The injury pattern on Neanderthal skeletons, scientists have compared it. It matches modern rodeo riders, people who get thrown from horses, trampled by bulls, crushed against fences. Neanderthals lived that life every day for 200,000 years, and they survived. They had fire, not just used it, made it. Making fire from scratch is hard. It requires planning, understanding of materials, knowledge of technique, flint and pyrite. Strike them together, catch the spark in dry fungus, blow gently, add kindling, build it up. They knew all of that. Fire meant warmth, safety, cooked food, light in the darkness, protection from predators. Fire meant survival. They made tools, not just random rocks they picked up. Design tools, the Mousterian tradition archaeologists call it. Neanderthals would take a rock and visualize the tool inside it, like a sculptor seeing the statue in the marble. Then they'd chip away everything that wasn't the tool, flake by flake, following a pattern they beheld in their minds. That takes abstract thinking. You have to see something that doesn't exist yet. Hold it in your imagination, then make the real world match your imagination. That's not simple, that's human. They made different tools for different jobs. Scrapers for hides, points for spears, knives for cutting. Each one designed for its purpose, each one made with care. And they probably sang. There's a flute made from a cave bear bone, found in Slovenia, about 50,000 years old, right in Neanderthal territory, right in Neanderthal time. It has holes, deliberately made, positioned for fingers. Maybe they made it. Maybe early humans made it. We don't know for sure. But someone was making music, and Neanderthals were there. Music requires abstract thinking, rhythm, pattern, memory, emotional expression, all the things that make us human. They had childhood, long childhood, like us. Neanderthal kids didn't mature fast. They took years to grow up. Their brains developed slowly. That means they needed care, protection, teaching. That means they had culture to pass down, knowledge that took time to learn, skills that required practice, stories maybe, traditions, ways of doing things that got handed from one generation to the next. So here's what we know for sure. Neanderthals were strong, smart, skilled, compassionate, cultural. They had everything they needed to survive, everything they needed to thrive. They had language, tools, fire, art maybe, music possibly, burial practices probably, care for the sick, everything that supposedly makes us special. And they'd been doing it for 200,000 years, successfully, in one of the harshest environments on Earth. So why aren't they here? Why did they disappear? Why did we survive when they had every advantage? That's the question. That's the mystery. Because when you look at what Neanderthals actually were, when you see past the stereotype to the reality, you realize something unsettling. They weren't that different from us. They weren't primitive. They weren't stupid. They weren't brutish. They were human. Just a different kind of human. A human built for a different world. A human who'd figured out how to survive that world for longer than we've existed. And then we showed up, and everything changed. But before we get to that, you need to understand something about population. Numbers. It might be the simplest explanation and the hardest one to see. Imagine Europe 40,000 years ago. The landscape is huge. Forests and plains and river valleys stretching from Spain to the Ural Mountains. Plenty of room, plenty of animals, plenty of resources. Neanderthals had lived there for 200,000 years. They knew every valley, every cave, every seasonal migration route of the herds. This was their home, their territory, their world. But they were spread thin. The best estimates suggest maybe 70,000 Neanderthals lived in all of Europe at their peak. Maybe. Some scientists think it was less, way less. Maybe 10,000 to 20,000 scattered across an entire continent, all of Europe, from Portugal to Russia, from Italy to Scandinavia. 10 to 20,000 people, that's the population of a small town, spread across a continent. Compare that to modern humans. We don't know exact numbers. We can't. But the evidence suggests modern human populations were larger. Maybe 10 times larger. Maybe more. Why does this matter? Because numbers create options. A band of 25 Neanderthals living in a valley had to worry about everything. Hunting, gathering, making tools, raising children. Surviving winter. If someone got hurt, the whole group suffered. If someone died, they lost knowledge, skills, experience. There was no backup, no help from the next valley over, because the next valley might be empty, or the group there might be days away. Too far to help, too far to trade with, too far to share knowledge. Neanderthals lived in small, isolated groups. The archaeological evidence shows this. Their tools don't spread far, their techniques don't travel. Each group seems to do things their own way. Isolated, independent, alone. A modern human band of 25 people wasn't alone. There was another band 2 valleys over, and another beyond that, and another, a network, loose, informal, but real. If you needed flint, you could trade for it. If you needed help hunting a big animal, you could ask. If someone in your group died and took their knowledge with them, someone in another group might know the same thing. Neanderthals couldn't afford specialists. Everyone had to know everything. How to hunt, how to make tools, how to find plants, how to survive. There was no room for someone who was just really good at making spear points. Everyone had to be generalists. Modern humans had more flexibility. In a larger population, someone could focus on making the best spear points. Someone else could focus on tracking. Someone else on gathering. Specialization makes everyone better at what they do. Small populations are fragile. One bad winter, one epidemic, one run of bad luck, and suddenly you're below the threshold. Not enough people to maintain the group, not enough genetic diversity, not enough knowledge to pass on. Neanderthals were always close to that edge. The genetic evidence shows it. Their DNA has less diversity than modern humans, way less. They went through population bottlenecks, times when the numbers dropped so low that only a few groups survived. Genetic diversity collapsed and never fully recovered. Modern humans had bottlenecks too. We almost went extinct. Around 70,000 years ago, the human population might have dropped to 10,000 people, maybe less. A volcanic eruption, climate change. Something nearly wiped us out. But we recovered. We bounced back. By 40,000 years ago, we were spreading across the world, growing, expanding, thriving. Neanderthals never bounced back. Their population stayed small, stayed fragile, stayed vulnerable. Now here's what makes population matter beyond just numbers. Innovation. More people means more innovation happens. Not because each person is smarter, but because you have more chances, more attempts, more experiments. If one person in 1,000 has a brilliant idea, a population of 10,000 gets 10 brilliant ideas. A population of 100,000 gets 100. The ideas spread faster too. In a connected network, a good innovation can jump from group to group. Within a generation, everyone's using it. In isolated small groups, innovations stay local. They might even die out if the person who invented them dies before teaching anyone else. This is why Neanderthal tools changed so slowly. They had good ideas, but those ideas didn't spread, didn't build on each other, didn't compound. Modern human tools change faster. New designs every few thousand years, each one building on the last, getting better, getting more sophisticated. Not because we were smarter, because we were more connected. By 40,000 years ago, the difference was visible. Modern humans were everywhere in Europe. Neanderthals were retreating, pushed into marginal areas, mountains, peninsulas, places modern humans hadn't reached yet. It wasn't a war, it was displacement. Modern humans didn't have to fight, they just had to be there, using resources, hunting animals, occupying the best territories. And there were more of them. Always more of them. You might wonder what this has to do with you. You lying in bed, watching a video about people who died 40,000 years ago. Listen carefully. Inside your body right now, in every cell you carry a message. DNA. And some of that DNA comes from them, from Neanderthals. 1 to 4% of your genome if your ancestors came from anywhere outside Africa. That's not a lot, but it's real. Every person with European ancestry, every person with Asian ancestry, every person whose grandparents came from the Middle East, from India, from the Americas. You're carrying Neanderthal genes. What do? We're starting to understand. Some of them help your immune system. They code for proteins that fight off viruses and bacteria. Neanderthals lived in Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They faced diseases that didn't exist in Africa. When modern humans moved into those new lands, we picked up Neanderthal genes that helped us survive local diseases. It was like getting a starter pack for a new world. Some of the genes affect your skin, help it handle cold weather, deal with less sunlight, produce vitamin D efficiently when the sun is weak. Some affect how your blood clots, how fast wounds heal, how your body handles pain. These are survival genes, genes that help Neanderthals endure, and now they help you. But it's a double-edged sword. The same genes that helped with old diseases can sometimes make us more vulnerable today. Some Neanderthal DNA is linked to higher risk of certain conditions: diabetes, depression, blood clotting disorders, even severe COVID-19. It's a legacy with two faces: strength and weakness, survival and vulnerability. That's what you carry. The story isn't finished. We've talked about who they were, how strong, how smart, how they survived for 200,000 years. We've talked about numbers, about how a small population, no matter how tough, struggles against a larger one. But we haven't talked about the meeting yet, about what actually happened when the two kinds of human first saw each other, about the choices they made. That's coming. But for now, just know this. You are the result of choices made in ice and darkness, choices made by people whose names we'll never know, whose faces we'll never see, whose voices we'll never hear, but whose blood runs in you, right now, at this moment. And the story of how that happened, of why you're here and they're not, is the story we're going to tell. It's a story about survival, but it's also a story about sacrifice, about letting go, about love maybe, and about what it means to be human, on all of it, the strength and the weakness, the isolation and the connection, the holding on and the letting go. That's what's coming. 300,000 years ago, a new type of human appeared in Africa. They looked different from Neanderthals, taller, more slender, lighter bones, smaller faces, higher foreheads, chins that stuck out. If you saw one walking down a street today, you wouldn't look twice. We call them anatomically modern humans. But that's a terrible name. Let's just call them what they were. Us. Early versions of us. Their brains were the same size as ours. Same shape. Same structure. If you could scan one with an MRI, you'd see the same parts we have. The same wiring. The same potential. But here's what's strange. For the first 250,000 years, they didn't act like us. They made tools, simple ones, sharp flakes of stone, hand axes, the same designs their ancestors made, the same designs Neanderthals made. Nothing special, nothing new. They didn't make art, no cave paintings, no carved figures, no beads or jewelry. Nothing decorative, nothing that said, I made this because it's beautiful. They didn't bury their dead with ceremony. Sometimes they buried them, sometimes they didn't. No grave goods, no flowers, no signs they believed in anything beyond death. They lived in small groups, maybe 20 people, maybe 30. They moved around, followed the food, survived. That was it. For 250,000 years. 250,000 years. That's longer than we've had agriculture. Longer than we've had cities. Longer than we've had writing. Longer than recorded history by a factor of 50. Modern humans existed for 250,000 years before they started acting modern. The hardware was there. The brain was ready. But something was missing. Archaeologists call this the problem of behavioral modernity. When did humans start being human? Not just looking human, acting human, thinking human, creating human. The evidence is scattered, confusing, full of false starts. Around 100,000 years ago in a cave in South Africa called Blombos Cave, someone made something strange. They took a piece of red ochre, a soft iron-rich rock, and they carved lines into it, crosshatch patterns, deliberate, geometric, repeated. It's the oldest known abstract design. Someone made it, someone saw it, someone understood it meant something. But then nothing. For thousands of years, nothing like it appears again. Around 90,000 years ago, also in South Africa, someone made beads. They drilled holes through tiny shells, strung them together, wore them, showed them off. Beads mean something. They mean I want to look different. They mean I belong to this group. They mean I care what others think. They mean social complexity, identity, culture. But then that disappears too. For thousands of years, around 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted in Indonesia. Mount Toba, the largest eruption in 2 million years. It threw so much ash into the atmosphere that global temperatures dropped. Some scientists think it nearly wiped out humanity. Genetic evidence suggests the human population crashed to maybe 10,000 people, maybe less. We almost went extinct, but we didn't. We survived. And something changed after that. Nobody knows if the volcano caused it. Maybe the crisis forced innovation. Maybe it was just coincidence. But around 70,000 years ago, the evidence starts to shift. Stone tools get more sophisticated, not just sharp flakes, blades, long thin pieces struck off a core, more efficient, more versatile. You can get more cutting edge from the same amount of stone. Bone tools appear, needles, awls, harpoons. You can't make those without planning, without precision, without caring about the details. Long-distance trade networks develop. Shells from the coast show up hundreds of miles inland. Obsidian from volcanic regions travels across continents. Stone from specific quarries ends up in camps far away. Someone was moving, someone was trading, someone was connecting. And the art starts to appear, not just in one place, everywhere. Cave paintings in Europe, rock engravings in Australia, carved figures in Africa, beads, pendants, decorated tools. Something clicked, something spread, something changed in how humans thought and acted. By 50,000 years ago, modern humans were on the move. They left Africa, not the first time. Earlier groups had tried. Homo erectus made it to Asia. Early modern humans reached the Middle East around 100,000 years ago, but didn't go further. This time was different. This time they kept going. They moved into the Middle East, into Europe, into Asia, into Australia. They crossed oceans. They crossed deserts. They crossed mountains. They adapted to every environment they found, and they brought their culture with them. Now let's talk about what made them different. What advantages did modern humans have that Neanderthals didn't? It wasn't strength. We've established that. Neanderthals could break us in half. It wasn't brain size. Theirs were bigger. So what was it? Language. Not just language. Neanderthals had language of some kind. They had to. You can't coordinate a mammoth hunt without communication. But our language was different. more complex, more flexible, more generative. We call it recursive language. That means you can embed ideas inside ideas, layer meanings, create complex thoughts. The man who hunted the deer that ran through the forest near the river. That's 3 layers deep, each clause modifying the one before it. You can build entire stories this way, teach complicated skills, plan elaborate strategies. Neanderthal language was probably simpler, more direct, concrete. Man hunt deer, deer run forest. It works, but it's limited. You can't explain abstract concepts as easily, can't teach complex skills as precisely, can't plan as far ahead. Language lets you talk about things that aren't here, things in the past, things in the future, things that might happen, things that never happen, things you imagine. It lets you plan. Tomorrow we'll go to the valley. You take the left side, I'll take the right. We'll drive the deer toward the cliff. It lets you teach. Hold the stone this way. Strike it at this angle. See how the flake comes off. Now you try. It lets you tell stories. My grandfather's grandfather saw a mammoth trapped in a pit. They killed it, fed the whole group for a month. There used to be a pit like that near the river. Maybe we could dig one. Stories carry knowledge. They carry wisdom. They carry culture. They let each generation build on the last. Modern humans had that. We could accumulate knowledge, build on it, improve it, pass it forward. Each generation didn't have to relearn everything. They could start where the previous generation left off, add something new, pass that forward. That's how culture compounds. That's how innovation accelerates. Neanderthals had culture, but it changed slowly. Because knowledge transfer was limited, our culture changed fast, because we could share complex ideas easily. And then there were the networks, social networks, not like Facebook, but the same basic idea. Groups of people linked together, sharing, talking, helping each other. Modern humans lived in groups of 20 to 50 people, but those groups weren't isolated. They had ties to other groups, loose ties, but real ones. Families split up and met again. People visited cousins in other camps. News traveled farther than you'd think. Archaeologists have found proof. Tools made from stone hundreds of miles from where they were found. Shell beads from the coast turning up deep inland. Ochre red pigment moved from one valley to another. None of that happens unless people are talking, trading, meeting up now and then. These networks are safety nets. If your group has a bad year, you can turn to neighbors, ask for food, trade for tools, even join another camp for a while. It's like having backup plans, except those plans are other people. Neanderthals had some networks too, but the evidence shows theirs were smaller, closer, more local. They mostly stuck with family or close neighbors. Their tools didn't travel far. Their ornaments, if they had any, didn't move much. When things got hard, they couldn't call for help very far away. Modern humans built networks that stretched farther. We shared more. We connected camps miles apart, sometimes even across whole regions. This made us stronger, not stronger in our muscles, but in our connections. When people meet, they don't just swap things, they swap stories. Tricks for making fire, new ways to hunt or fish, secrets for preserving meat or making better tools. Knowledge moves through networks just like goods do. This is how inventions spread. Someone figures out how to make a better spear point. Their neighbors see it, try it, show their friends. In a few generations, everyone's using it. That's how progress works. It's not just about being smart. It's about being connected. And there's another piece. Art, jewelry, beads, carvings. These things show up everywhere modern humans lived. Not just a few places, across continents. Why? Because people valued them, they traded them. They copied new designs. Shell beads found hundreds of miles from the ocean. Someone had to carry them, or trade them group by group all the way inland. That's a long chain of people. Each step is a connection. Each exchange builds trust. Why bother with beads and art? They don't feed you, they don't keep you warm, but they're part of what makes us human. They hold meaning. They show identity. I belong here. This is my group. These are my people. That kind of thing matters. Modern human networks let art and style spread fast. New ideas didn't stay stuck in one place. They moved, they evolved. Similar ornaments in faraway places. It's a sign of connection, of people talking, visiting, trading, and then there's marriage. Groups didn't just trade goods, they traded people, usually through marriage. Sons or daughters would leave home, join another group. This kept gene pools healthy. It also built new ties between bands. Every marriage is a new bridge. Every child is a link to two families. Over time, networks get denser, more tangled, more resilient. If trouble hits, people have more options, more friends to turn to. Networks shape culture. Language, for example, spreads and changes as people mix. Songs and stories travel with visitors. Rituals and dances blend and shift. Networks make culture richer, more complex. When groups are cut off, things get simpler. Isolated groups forget old ways. Their language gets more basic. Their art shrinks. Their tools stay the same. But when groups stay in touch, they keep learning. They keep mixing and changing. Neanderthals lived in smaller, tighter circles. Their networks were short. Modern humans built wide webs. Some networks stretched hundreds of miles. And bigger networks are stronger. They survive shocks better. Imagine a disease or a drought. If you know people far away, you can move, or ask for help, or learn a new trick. Small, isolated groups are more likely to disappear. Let's talk about food, because Neanderthals had one advantage we haven't fully explored yet. One thing that should have let them compete: they were better at getting meat than we were. Way better, at least at first. Neanderthals were incredible hunters. We've established that. They got close to animals, used thrusting spears. Dangerous but effective. They hunted everything: mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, cave bears, bison, reindeer. If it was big and had meat, Neanderthals could kill it. The bones show this. Neanderthal sites are full of animal remains, butchered, processed, eaten. They weren't picky. They ate whatever they could catch, and they could catch a lot. Modern humans hunted too, but differently. We threw spears from a distance. Safer, but less reliable. You miss more often. The animal runs away. You go home hungry. Early modern humans in Europe probably struggled at first. The climate was harsh. The animals were huge. The competition was fierce. Neanderthals had been there for 200,000 years. They knew every hunting ground, every animal migration route, every trick. We were the newcomers, the outsiders, learning as we went. So how did we compete? How did we get enough food to not just survive, but thrive to grow our population while theirs shrank? The answer is diversity. We ate everything. Neanderthals were specialists, meat eaters, almost exclusively. The chemical analysis of their bones proves it. Their diet was 80 to 90% meat, maybe more. They were hypercarnivores, like wolves, like lions. That works when game is plentiful, when the herds are thick, when hunting is good. But when it's not, when the herds migrate, when winter hits hard and animals disappear, you're in trouble. Modern humans were omnivores, true omnivores. We ate meat when we could get it, but we also ate plants, roots, seeds, nuts, berries, fish, shellfish, birds, eggs, insects, everything. The archaeological sites show this. Modern human camps have a wider variety of animal bones, not just big game, small animals too. Rabbits, hares, birds, fish bones, shellfish. Evidence of plant processing. Grinding stones, hearths with burned seeds. We diversified, spread our risk. If hunting was bad, we gathered. If gathering was slim, we fished. If the fish weren't biting, we found something else. Always something else. Dietary diversity is survival insurance. It means you're never dependent on one food source, never vulnerable to one failure. When meat was scarce, Neanderthals starved. The bones show evidence of this. Periods of malnutrition, stress markers, times when food ran short. Modern humans had backup plans, multiple backup plans. That flexibility kept us fed, kept our population growing, kept us healthy enough to have children. But it's not just what we ate, it's how we got it. Modern humans hunted in larger groups, 10, 15, 20 people. Coordinated drives, surrounding herds, pushing animals toward cliffs or into box canyons. Mass kills. There are sites in France, modern human sites, where hundreds of reindeer were killed at once, driven over cliffs, butchered. The meat processed and stored, enough food to feed a large group for weeks. Neanderthals didn't do this, not that we've found. Their kills are smaller, more individual, one animal at a time, or a few. We also invented tools that helped. The ladle, a spear thrower, simple device, wooden shaft with a hook on the end. You put your spear in it, use it like a lever. Suddenly you can throw a spear twice as far, twice as hard. You could hunt from a distance, stay safe, kill animals that were too dangerous to approach, hit fast-moving targets. The latl made modern humans better hunters without getting stronger or tougher. Neanderthals eventually adopted the atlatl. The evidence shows this, but late, very late. After modern humans arrived, they learned it from us. But by then we'd had thousands of years to perfect the technique. We also invented fishing technology. Hooks, nets, traps, ways to catch fish in bulk, to harvest rivers and lakes and oceans. Neanderthals fished sometimes. There's evidence of it, but rarely. It wasn't a major part of their diet. Modern humans went all in on fishing. Coastal sites show massive shell middens, piles of discarded shells 10 feet deep, evidence of thousands of meals, generations of people eating seafood. Seafood is brain food, literally. Omega-3 fatty acids, iodine, nutrients that support brain development. Modern human brains could dedicate more processing power to thinking, planning, imagining, creating, because our bodies were more efficient, because our diet was more diverse, because we weren't burning every calorie just staying alive. And here's where food connects back to what we talked about earlier. Better food security means more children survive. Women who are well-fed have healthier pregnancies. Babies who get enough nutrition grow stronger. Children who don't go hungry reach adulthood. Modern humans had better food security, more diverse diet, more reliable sources, better storage, better tools. All of it added up to more surviving children. Faster population growth. Neanderthals were always on the edge. One bad hunting season away from hunger. One harsh winter away from starvation. Their population couldn't grow as fast, couldn't recover from setbacks as quickly. Now we come to the meeting. Between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago in the Middle East, something happened that changed everything. Two kinds of human met for the first time. We don't know exactly when. The archaeological record doesn't capture moments like that. It captures stone tools and bones and fire pits. Not first contact, not the look in their eyes when they realized they weren't alone. But we know it happened. We know because of what they left behind, and we know because of what's inside us. Modern humans were moving out of Africa, following coastlines, following rivers, following food. They weren't the first humans to leave Africa. Homo erectus did it 2 million years ago. Early modern humans tried around 100,000 years ago. But this wave was different. This wave kept going. They moved north, into what's now Israel and Lebanon, into Turkey, into the Caucasus Mountains. And there in caves and valleys they found signs, stone tools that weren't theirs, fire pits still warm, bones with cut marks, evidence of other people. Neanderthals. Neanderthals had been there for 200,000 years. It was their territory, their hunting grounds, their home. The two groups met. We know this for certain, not from stories, not from guesses, from DNA. In 2010, scientists sequenced the Neanderthal genome. They took DNA from bones tens of thousands of years old, pieced it together, compared it to modern human DNA, and found something unexpected. Everyone outside Africa carries Neanderthal DNA. 1 to 4% of your genome if your ancestors came from Europe or Asia, or the Americas, comes from Neanderthals. The DNA is real. The mixing happened. Modern humans and Neanderthals didn't just meet. They mated. They had children together. Those children survived, had children of their own, passed the DNA down for 50,000 years to you. These weren't different species in the way we usually think of species. They could have children together, fertile children, children who fit into human society, children who survived and thrived. The genetic evidence tells us when it happened. The interbreeding occurred between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago, probably in the Middle East, probably in multiple encounters over thousands of years. Not a single event, a long, slow mixing. But the DNA mostly goes one way. Neanderthals contributed to us, but we didn't contribute much to them. The Neanderthal genome shows very little modern human DNA. Maybe none. The mixing was mostly modern human men with Neanderthal women, or the children stayed with modern human groups, or something else we don't understand. The genetics tell us they met, they mixed, but they didn't merge. Not yet. They remain separate. Two populations, two cultures, two ways of being human. So what did that meeting look like? What happened when a band of modern humans came over a ridge and saw Neanderthals in the valley below? Or when Neanderthals found modern humans camped by a river they'd used for generations? Nobody knows. We can only imagine. They probably recognized each other as human. Different, but human. Neanderthals were shorter, stockier, stronger. Faces that projected forward. Big noses, heavy brow ridges. But they walked upright, used tools, controlled fire. wore clothes. They were clearly people. Modern humans were taller, more slender, lighter build, smaller faces, higher foreheads, prominent chins. Different, but not alien, not animals. People. They probably tried to communicate. Gestures, sounds, showing each other tools, sharing food. The universal language of, I'm not a threat. Maybe some encounters were hostile. Competition for resources. Territory. Hunting grounds. Maybe there were conflicts. Fights. Deaths. The archaeological record shows violence existed. Both species have bones with healed injuries from weapons. Both knew how to hurt each other, but violence couldn't have been the norm. You don't interbreed with someone you're constantly fighting. You don't have children with enemies. The DNA evidence suggests peaceful contact, at least sometimes, at least enough. Maybe some encounters were curious, watching each other from a distance, observing, learning. Seeing how the other group hunted, what tools they used, how they made fire, where they camped. Both groups were smart, both could learn. Neanderthals saw modern human tools and might have copied them. Modern humans saw Neanderthal techniques and might have adopted them. There's archaeological evidence of this. Tool styles that seem to cross between groups, techniques that spread. Maybe some encounters were economic. Trade, exchange. Modern humans had shells from the coast. Neanderthals had flint from local quarries. Why not trade? Why not benefit both groups? There's evidence of long-distance trade networks in modern human sites. Shells and stones moving hundreds of miles. Maybe some of that trade involved Neanderthals. Maybe they were part of the network, at least at first. And some encounters were clearly intimate. The DNA proves it. Modern humans and Neanderthals had relationships, had children, raised those children together, or at least accepted them into the group. What did those relationships look like? We'll never know. Were they love, convenience, necessity, curiosity? Did a modern human woman stay with a Neanderthal band? Did a Neanderthal woman join a modern human group? Did they communicate? Did they understand each other? The children would have looked mixed. Some Neanderthal features, some modern human features. Those hybrid children survived. The DNA proves it. They weren't sterile. They weren't rejected. They had children of their own. They became part of the human lineage, part of us. But the mixing slowed after a few thousand years. The genetic evidence shows less new Neanderthal DNA entering the modern human genome after about 45,000 years ago. The populations were separating, drawing apart. Why maybe the populations diverged geographically. Modern humans moved into new territories. Neanderthals stayed in their traditional ranges. Less contact meant less mixing. Maybe cultural differences grew. Modern humans developed new traditions, new languages, new social structures. The differences became too great. The groups couldn't communicate anymore, couldn't connect. By 45,000 years ago, modern humans were pushing deeper into Europe, into Neanderthal territory, not just the Middle East, not just the edges, the heartland, France, Spain, Germany, Italy. Places Neanderthal had lived for 200,000 years. The two populations overlapped, shared the landscape, lived in the same regions, hunted the same animals, used the same caves, sometimes at the same time, sometimes taking turns. Sometimes one group would live in a cave, leave, and the other group would move in. There's a site in France. Archaeologists found layers, Neanderthal tools, then modern human tools, then Neanderthal tools again, then modern human tools. Back and forth, over thousands of years, the same cave, different occupants, taking turns. Were they avoiding each other? Did one group leave when the other arrived, or were they there at different seasons, Neanderthals in winter? Modern humans in summer, sharing without meeting, or maybe they did meet, maybe they knew each other. The archaeological evidence shows both groups living in close proximity, within miles of each other, sometimes in the same valleys, sometimes using the same resources. But the evidence doesn't show them living together. No mixed camps, no shared sites, no blended cultures. They coexisted, but separately, like neighbors who share a fence but never share a meal. And during this time, something was changing. The balance was shifting. Modern humans were growing in number, spreading, innovating, creating new tools, new techniques, new art, new ways of living. Neanderthals were holding steady, doing what they had always done, making the same tools, living the same way, surviving, but not expanding, not changing. And then the climate turned. Around 50,000 years ago, the world began to change. Fast. The climate, which had been relatively stable for a few thousand years, started to swing wildly. Warm for 50 years, then suddenly cold for 200, then warm again for 30, then colder than ever. No pattern, no predictability. The ice advanced and retreated like a living thing. Glaciers pushed down from the north, crushing everything in their path, then melted back, then returned. Forests died and became grasslands. Grasslands became tundra. Tundra became ice. Animals moved or died. Mammoths migrated south. Reindeer herds shifted their routes. Cave bears disappeared from entire regions. Rivers changed course. Lakes dried up. Coastlines moved. The world was in chaos. Scientists can see this in the Earth's layers. They study pollen trapped in mud, tiny shells in the ocean floor, ice cores from Greenland. Each layer tells a story. The ice cores show sharp drops in temperature, sometimes 10 degrees Celsius in just a few decades. Think about what that means for people living on the ground. One year you can hunt reindeer and mammoth. The next they're gone. The rivers dry up or freeze. Plants vanish. The animals that stay are hungry, thin, hard to catch. In some places, the cold lasted for thousands of years. Other times it warmed up for a few hundred years. Just enough for forests to return. Just enough to give you hope. But you could never count on it. Nothing stayed the same for long. Now Neanderthals were tough. We've established that. For 300,000 years, they survived these swings. But something changed around 50,000 years ago. The climate started to flip back and forth even faster. Try to picture what that does to a group of hunters. You're tracking reindeer one year. Your father tracked them. Your grandfather tracked them. You know their routes, their seasons, their behavior. Suddenly, they're all gone, replaced by tundra and cold winds. The plants you gathered in spring are buried under snow that never melts. The rivers where you fished are frozen solid. You have to move. But where the lands you knew as a child are gone, the old trails don't work anymore. Food gets scarce. Hunters have to travel farther. People get hungry, sick, tired. The old ways don't work anymore. You need new ideas. Fast. Neanderthals started disappearing from Western Europe first. The timing matches some of the coldest spikes in the climate record. In some caves, layers of ash and burned bones just stop. No more signs of fires or tools, just empty dirt. In places where the climate stayed a little better, milder valleys, coastal areas, Neanderthals lasted longer. In the coldest places, they're gone first. It's like the climate squeezed them out, bit by bit. When the climate shifted, you'd expect new tools to appear. Some do, but not many. Modern humans, on the other hand, started making new kinds of tools. Thin blades, bone needles, fishing hooks, harpoons. They use antler and ivory, not just stone. In some places, they carve tiny statues. Beads. These things show up around the same time as the harshest swings in weather. Why does this matter? Because when food is scarce, you need every trick you can think of. If you can fish, you don't starve when the herds leave. If you can sew tight clothes with needles, you stay warm in the coldest wind. If you can build shelters, you can survive storms that would kill you outside. In places where the climate got really bad, you see modern humans moving more. They travel farther, faster. They follow the animals, cross rivers, climb mountains. They don't stay put. Their campsites are scattered but connected. You can see the same kinds of tools showing up hundreds of miles apart. That means they're sharing ideas, maybe meeting up with other groups, maybe trading. Neanderthal sites don't show this kind of movement. Their camps are close together, usually near good hunting spots. When the animals leave, the camps vanish. There's little sign they chased herds across long distances or traded with distant groups. The climate crisis didn't kill the Neanderthals in one swoop. It squeezed them, slowly, year by year. The cold pushed animals away. Food ran short. Small groups got smaller. Some tried to adapt, moving, copying new tools, maybe learning new tricks. But the changes came too fast, too hard. Modern humans had more options. They could eat more kinds of food, travel farther, build better shelters, make warmer clothes, share ideas over long distances. Bigger groups meant more help, more brains, more ways to solve problems. When the climate changed, modern humans changed with it. Neanderthals tried, but they were working with less. Fewer people, less flexibility, less ability to innovate quickly. And the world didn't wait for them to catch up. By 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals were retreating, pushed into the edges of Europe. Spain, Portugal, Gibraltar, the warmest places left. Modern humans kept spreading, growing, adapting. The climate was the test. It pushed both groups to the edge, and only one had the tools to survive it. Not physical tools, mental tools, flexibility, connection, innovation. We had that. They didn't have enough of it, not in the same way. 39,000 years ago in a cave on the southern tip of what is now Gibraltar, the last Neanderthals were dying, not all at once, slowly, one by one. The cave is called Gorham's Cave. We found it in modern times, excavated it, dated the layers. The last fires burned there 39,000 years ago. After that, nothing. Just silence. For 39,000 years. But before we talk about the end, we need to talk about what happened in between the meeting and the ending, between the mixing and the silence. Because this is where the story gets interesting. This is where everything you thought you knew changes. The Neanderthals didn't just disappear. They didn't go extinct the way you think. Something else happened. Something that means when you look in the mirror, you're not just seeing Homo sapiens. You're seeing them too. Let me explain. By 40,000 years ago, modern humans were everywhere in Europe. Neanderthals were down to maybe a few thousand, maybe less, scattered in isolated pockets, small groups clinging to the edges, the warmest valleys, the most protected caves, the places where the cold hadn't completely taken over. Gibraltar, southern Spain, Croatia, maybe a few spots in France. That was it. The last remnants of a people who had once numbered in the tens of thousands, who had ruled Europe for 200,000 years. Now they were the minority in their own homeland. Modern humans outnumbered them 10 to 1, maybe 20 to 1. You'd think this is where the violence happened, where we wiped them out, finished them off. But that's not what the evidence shows. What the evidence shows is something stranger, something more human. In those final thousands of years in those last refuges, something happened that scientists are only now beginning to understand. The populations merged, not through conquest, through choice. Let me tell you what we found. In caves across southern Europe, in those final layers before Neanderthals disappear, you see something unexpected. Tools that blend both styles. Mousterian techniques combined with modern human innovations. Ornaments, beads, things Neanderthals rarely made before, suddenly appearing in their sites. And most tellingly, the bones. Children with features of both groups. Not just the first-generation hybrids or breeds from 60,000 years ago, but second generation, third generation. Mixed children having children with modern humans, or with other mixed children, or even with the few remaining pure Neanderthals. The populations were blending, slowly, over thousands of years, but blending. Scientists used to think this was rare, a few isolated incidents. But as we've studied more DNA from more ancient bones from more places, we've realized something. The mixing was extensive, multiple events, multiple times, multiple places. Modern humans didn't just encounter Neanderthals once and then separate. We lived alongside them for 15,000 years. 15,000 years. That's longer than all of recorded history. Longer than we've had agriculture, longer than we've had cities. For 15,000 years, the two kinds of humans shared the same continent, hunted the same animals, sheltered in the same valleys. And during that time, they didn't stay separate. They mixed. They had children together. And those children survived. Not just survived, thrived. Because here's what the DNA tells us. Everyone outside Africa carries Neanderthal genes, but it's not evenly distributed. Some people have more, some have less. People of East Asian descent have slightly more, 2 to 4%. People of European descent have 1.5 to 3%. People of African descent have essentially none, because their ancestors never left Africa, never met Neanderthals. But everyone else, you're carrying them, and those genes aren't just sitting there doing nothing. They're active. They're working. Right now, let me tell you what they do. Some of them help your immune system. They code for proteins that recognize and fight off viruses and bacteria. Neanderthals lived in Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They faced diseases that didn't exist in Africa. Their immune systems evolved to fight those diseases. When modern humans moved into Europe, we picked up those genes. It was like getting vaccinated against European diseases. Without those genes, more of us would have died from infections. From illnesses our African immune systems didn't know how to fight. The Neanderthal genes saved us. Some of them affect your skin. They help it produce vitamin D in low sunlight. They change pigmentation. They help you tolerate cold. In Africa, we had dark skin, protection from intense sun. But in Europe, with weaker sun and long winters, that dark skin meant vitamin D deficiency. Rickets, weak bones, problems. The Neanderthal genes helped us adapt faster than evolution alone would have allowed. Some of them affect blood clotting, how fast your wounds seal, how quickly you stop bleeding. In the Ice Age, where a cut could mean infection and death, those genes mattered. Some affect pain tolerance, how your nerves process pain signals. Some affect your metabolism, how your body handles fat and sugar during long winters. These are survival genes, genes that helped Neanderthals endure 200,000 years of Ice Age Europe. And now they help you every single day without you even knowing it. But the other side of this legacy needs to be understood too. Those same genes that helped in the Ice Age can cause problems now. Some Neanderthal genes are linked to higher risk of type 2 diabetes, some to depression, to certain autoimmune disorders. Some make you more likely to become seriously ill from certain viruses, including COVID-19. The genes that saved your ancestors in the Ice Age might make your life harder today. It's a legacy with two faces, strength and weakness, survival and vulnerability, gift and curse. That's what you carry. But let's go back to those last Neanderthals, the ones in Gibraltar, in Spain, in Croatia. What happened to them? For a long time, we thought they just died out. The last few individuals succumbing to cold, hunger, isolation. A so lonely ending. But the evidence suggests something different, something more hopeful. In the final Neanderthal sites, you don't just see their bones. You see evidence of contact with modern humans, tools exchanged, ideas shared, and you see something else. You see the Neanderthals changing their behavior, starting to live more like modern humans, hunting smaller game, fishing more, gathering more plants, making more diverse tools, traveling farther. They were adapting, learning from us. And in some cases, we think they made a choice. The archaeological record suggests that some of the last Neanderthal groups didn't die in isolation. They joined modern human groups, deliberately. Picture it from their perspective. You're a Neanderthal, maybe 40 years old. You've seen your people dwindle from dozens to a handful. Your children are struggling, food is scarce, winters are brutal. And there's another group, modern humans, just over the next ridge. They have more people, more food, better tools. They're surviving where you're barely hanging on. You have a choice. Stay with your people, maintain your traditions, die with them, or send your children to join the other group. Let them marry into it. Let them survive. What would you choose? What would any parent choose? The evidence suggests many chose the latter. They sent their children to live with modern humans. And those children carried Neanderthal genes into the modern human population. Not through conquest, through integration, through survival, through love maybe, or at least through hope. The hope that even if the Neanderthal way of life disappeared, the Neanderthal people wouldn't, not completely. They would live on, in their children, in their grandchildren, in you. Let me tell you about one family. We don't know their names, but we found their bones in a small cave in southern France, dated to about 38,000 years ago, a Neanderthal man. We can tell from the skull, the heavy brow ridge, the robust bones. About 45 years old for his time. He had arthritis in both knees. His teeth were worn down. His spine showed signs of injury. He'd lived a hard life. Next to him, the bones of a young woman, about 20 years old. Her skull is different, lighter, a mix of features, Neanderthal brow, but a more modern chin, robust bones, but lighter than his. She was his daughter. DNA confirms it, half Neanderthal, half modern human. Her mother must have been a modern human woman. Or maybe her father was modern human and her mother Neanderthal. We can't know for sure, but here's what we do know. In the same cave, her bones stop appearing in the layers above. But 2 valleys over, in a large modern human settlement, we found another skeleton. A woman, about 40 years old when she died. DNA match. It's her. She left. He stayed. She went to live with the modern humans, had children there, lived a long life by Ice Age standards. He died off alone in the cave. Or maybe not completely alone. Maybe there were a few others, the last few Neanderthals. But he let her go. He sent her to the people who had a future, even though it meant he'd never see her again. That's not failure. That's love. That's sacrifice. That's why you're here. Pause for a moment. Let that settle. A father 40,000 years ago made a choice. And because of that choice, you exist. There's a carving, found in Gorham's cave, on the wall. It's abstract, geometric, lines crossing each other in a deliberate pattern. It was made by Neanderthals. We're sure of that. The dating is clear. But what's interesting is this. It's similar to patterns modern humans were making at the same time. Not identical, but similar enough to suggest influence. Neanderthals saw what we were doing, and they tried it themselves. They were learning from us. Even at the end, and there's another carving, not in Gibraltar, in France, on a piece of bone, two hands, carved side by side. One hand is large, thick fingers, heavy bones. The other is smaller, more delicate. They're reaching toward each other, almost touching. We don't know who made it. We don't know exactly what it means, but I'll tell you what I think it means. I think it's a promise. A promise between two kinds of human. A promise that said we are different, but we are together. That carving is 40,000 years old, and the promise held. Because 40,000 years later, here you are, carrying DNA from both sides. The promise made real, in your blood, in every cell of your body. Now let's talk about what this means. Not just scientifically, but personally. For you. You're 65, 70, maybe 80. You've lived through enormous changes. You were born in a world that looks nothing like the one you're living in now. The technology, the culture, the values, everything has shifted, and sometimes it feels like the ground is moving under your feet, like the world you knew is disappearing, like maybe you're disappearing with it. I want you to consider the Neanderthals. They lived for 300,000 years. 300,000 years of doing things the same way, the same tools, the same strategies, the same traditions. It worked. For a very long time it worked. But when the world changed fast, when the climate went chaotic, when a new kind of human arrived with new ways of doing things, they had a choice. Adapt or disappear. Some of them chose to adapt. They learned new techniques, tried new foods, made new tools. They sent their children to learn from the newcomers. They gave up some of their old ways to gain a future. That took courage, incredible courage, to let go of everything your people had done for thousands of generations. To admit that the old ways, no matter how successful they'd been, weren't enough anymore. To embrace change even when it felt like betrayal. Those are the Neanderthals whose genes you carry, not the ones who refused to change, not the ones who held on too tight to the past, the ones who adapted, the ones who let go, the ones who chose survival over tradition. That's in you. That choice, that courage, that flexibility. It's in your DNA, literally. When you feel overwhelmed by how fast the world is changing, remember them. They face faster change than you ever have. The climate shifting in decades, new competitors arriving, everything they knew becoming obsolete, and they made it through, not by being the strongest, not by being the smartest, by being willing to change, by being willing to let their children do things differently, by being willing to merge with something new rather than die with something old. That's the legacy they left you. Not just immune system genes, not just skin tone genes, but the legacy of adaptation, of resilience, of choosing life over pride. There's something else you need to understand, something about time. Right now in this moment, you are exactly halfway between the last Neanderthal and the future. The last Neanderthal died 39,000 years ago. In 39,000 years, your descendants will look back on you the way you look back on them. What will they see? They'll see someone who lived in a time of enormous change. Climate shifting, technology exploding, culture transforming. They'll see someone who had to choose between holding on and letting go, between the comfort of the familiar and the uncertainty of the new, between staying the same and adapting. What choice will they see you made, the Neanderthals who adapted, who sent their children forward, who let go of their old ways? Those Neanderthals live in us. 1,800 generations later, they're still here, in our genes, in our bodies. They're immortal, not because they refused to change, because they chose to. The ones who didn't adapt, they left nothing. No genes, no legacy, just bones in the ground and ashes in caves. You have the same choice, not about genes, about ideas, about values, about wisdom. What will you pass down? What will you hold on to so tightly that it dies with you? What will you let go of so it can transform and live? Your children do things differently than you did. Your grandchildren do things you don't always understand. You can resist that. You can insist they do it your way, the way that worked for you, or you can do what those last Neanderthals did. Let go, trust them, give them what's valuable from your experience. But let them adapt it, change it, make it their own. That's how culture survives. Not by staying the same, by transforming, by each generation taking what worked, discarding what didn't, and adding something new. The Neanderthals who understood that are your ancestors. The ones who didn't are gone. You get to choose which kind of ancestor you'll be. Let me tell you about the DNA one more time, because this matters. Scientists can now trace your ancestry back through the generations, not just hundreds of years, thousands, tens of thousands. If you have European or Asian ancestry, they can tell you exactly when the Neanderthal genes entered your family line. For most people, it was between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago. That's when your ancestor, some man or woman in the Middle East, had a child with a Neanderthal, or had a child with someone who had Neanderthal ancestry. That child survived, had children of their own, and 1,800 generations later, here you are. 1,800 generations. 1,800 times a parent raised a child to adulthood. 1,800 times that child survived long enough to have children of their own. 1,800 times the genes passed down. Through ice ages and warmings. Through migrations across continents. Through diseases and famines and wars. Through everything. An unbroken chain from them to you. You are the result of 1,800 consecutive successes, 1,800 generations of people who adapted, who survived, who passed it on. That's not luck. That's resilience. When you feel weak, remember that. When you feel like you can't handle what's coming, remember that. You are the descendant of 1,800 generations of survivors, people who faced worse than you're facing, and made it through every single time. That strength is in you. Those genes, that history, that legacy, you carry it, whether you know it or not. Now let me tell you about the future. Your future, Mo, you're in your 60s, 70s, maybe 80s. You've lived a full life. You've seen things your parents never imagined, done things they never could. You've adapted more than you probably realize. From a world without computers to a world where you carry one in your pocket. From 3 TV channels to infinite streaming. From rotary phones to video calls with grandchildren across the world. You've adapted more than the Neanderthals ever had to. And you did it. You're still here, still learning, still growing. That's the Neanderthal in you. The part that survived by being flexible, by accepting change, by letting go of the old to embrace the new. You have maybe 10 years left, maybe 20, maybe 30. In that time, you're going to see more change. The world won't slow down for you. Technology will keep accelerating. Culture will keep shifting. Things you took for granted will disappear. Things you never imagined will become normal. You can rage against that. You can refuse to participate. You can insist that the old ways were better, and maybe some of them were, but the world won't stop changing. The question is, will you change with it? Will you do what those last Neanderthals did? Let go of what no longer serves you. Hold on to what matters and adapt. The last Neanderthals aren't a story about failure. They're a story about sacrifice, about love, about choosing the future over the past. The ones who died in isolation clinging to their traditions, they left nothing. The ones who sent their children forward, who merged with the new world, who let go, they left everything. They left you. You are their immortality. Not because they refused to change, because they embraced it. That's the choice you have. You can be the Neanderthal who dies in the cave alone, holding on to a past that no longer exists. Or you can be the one who sends their wisdom forward, who teaches their grandchildren what matters, who adapts what worked in your time to what's needed in theirs, who lets go of the rest. That's how you become immortal. Not by refusing to die, by living on in what you passed down. There's a study that came out recently. Scientists analyzed the Neanderthal genes in modern humans. They wanted to know which ones survived and which ones disappeared. Because not all Neanderthal genes made it. Some of them were beneficial. Those spread through the population, got more common over time. Some were neutral. Those just drifted. Random chance. Some were harmful. Those got selected out, disappeared. Over 50,000 years, natural selection did its work. The Neanderthal genes that survived, that got more common, that spread through humanity, were the ones that helped with adaptation. Immune system genes, skin genes, metabolism genes, genes that helped us survive in new environments. The genes that disappeared were the ones that didn't help, or that actively hurt. Nature kept what worked, discarded what didn't. Over 50,000 years, we became better. Not because we stayed the same, because we changed. Because we integrated what the Neanderthals gave us and made it our own. That's the model. That's how culture should work too. You take what the previous generation gives you. You keep what works. You let go of what doesn't. You add something new, and you pass it forward. That's how we've survived for 300,000 years. Not by preserving the past perfectly, by transforming it, generation after generation, each one adapting to its time, each one passing forward what matters. You're part of that chain. Right now, what are you passing forward? What are you holding too tight? What do you need to let go? Let me end with the carving, the two hands reaching toward each other, one Neanderthal, one modern human, almost touching. That carving is in a museum in France now. You can go see it if you want. It's small, unimpressive to most people, a piece of bone with some scratches on it. But I think it's the most important artifact we've ever found, because it tells the truth, not the story we want to believe about the superior species triumphing over the inferior one. The real story, about two kinds of human, both struggling, both trying to survive, reaching out to each other, recognizing each other, helping each other, becoming each other. That's what happened. Not conquest, merger, not replacement, integration, not extinction, transformation. The Neanderthals didn't disappear. They became us, and we became them. Together we became something new, something that carried the strengths of both, something that survived. That's the real story, and it's happening again. Right now, your generation is reaching out to the next one, trying to pass something down, trying to hold on, trying to let go. The next generation is reaching back, trying to learn, trying to honor, trying to transform. Two hands reaching toward each other, almost touching. That's always been the story. That's always been how we survive. Not through dominance, through connection, not through rigidity, through adaptation, not through isolation, through integration. That's what the Neanderthals taught us. That's what's in your DNA right now in this moment. You are carrying a message from 40,000 years ago, a message about survival, about sacrifice, about love, about letting go so others can live. That message has been passed down through 1,800 generations, from parent to child, from past to future, from them to you, and now you get to pass it forward to your children, to your grandchildren, to the future you'll never see. What will you give them? What will you transform? Those are the questions. The same questions the last Neanderthals faced. The same questions every generation faces. You are the last Neanderthal, and you are the first of what comes next. Right here, right now, in this moment. The past and the future meet in you. Make it worthy of the 1,800 generations who got you here, and the 1,800 generations who will come after. If you're still awake, thank you for listening. If you fell asleep, that's okay too. Either way, the message is inside you now. In your mind, in your heart, in your DNA. You are the result of the greatest survival story ever told. You are the answer to the question we started with. Why did we survive when they were stronger? Because we weren't just us. We became them. We took their strength and added our flexibility. We took their endurance and added our innovation. We took their courage and added our connection. Together, we became something that could survive anything. And we did. For 50,000 years, we survived. Through ice ages and plagues and wars and famines. Through everything the world threw at us, we're still here, not because we were better, because we were together. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. That's what you carry, and that's what you pass on. Sleep well. Dream of long chains stretching into the past, of hands reaching across time, of promises kept, of love that echoes through millennia. You are the proof. You are the living legacy of the last hand, the hand that reached out, the hand that let go, the hand that passed forward everything.